The Molotov cocktail didn't just fall. It tumbled through the night sky like a dying star, an arc of dirty orange fire against the relentless black rain. I watched it smash against the asphalt inches from my front bumper, the glass shattering with a sound that was felt more than heard, spewing liquid flame that roared up to lick at the chrome of my grille. I was 40 tons of steel parked sideways in a dead-end street, the only thing standing between a terrified family and a mob that had decided the law didn't apply to them tonight. In the cab, the air smelled of ozone and old coffee. Outside, it smelled of gasoline and hate. I gripped the tire thumper in my right hand, the hickory heavy and reassuring, and watched the man with the baseball bat scream an order that I knew couldn't be taken back. He wasn't posturing anymore. He was hunting. And I was the only wall left standing. Before we continue, please tell us where in the world are you tuning in from? Drop your city and mile marker. We love seeing how far our stories travel. Name's Jack. 20 years on the road, hauling everything from structural steel to sensitive freight. And if you drive long enough, you learn that the dark isn't empty. It's waiting. Tonight, I was the wall. The rain was coming down with a violence that felt personal, hammering the roof of the cab like handfuls of gravel thrown by an angry giant. I was running a Peterbilt 389, a long-nosed beast with a Detroit 60 engine that was currently growling low in its throat, unhappy about the weather and even less happy about where we were parked. I'd pulled off the interstate looking for a shortcut around a 3-car pileup near the state line, and the GPS had routed me through a place called Oak Haven. The name was a lie. There were no oaks, just the skeletal remains of elms that had died of blight years ago, and there was certainly no haven. The town looked like it had been chewed up and spat out by the economy, leaving behind rusted sidings, Main Street storefronts with plywood over the glass, and a silence that felt heavy, like the air before a tornado touches down. I pulled the rig into a gravel lot outside Mabel's Kettle, a diner sitting about 40 miles east of nowhere. My stomach was twisting, demanding hot food, and my logbook was screaming for a break. I set the brakes, psht, and the sound echoed too loudly in the empty lot. I killed the lights, but I left the engine idling for a minute, just watching. That's the first rule of the road when you're solo. You watch the ground before you put your boots on it. The lot was mud, churned up by tires that had left deep, erratic ruts. I stepped down, my boots sinking an inch into the cold sludge. The air smelled like wet asphalt, wood smoke, and something metallic, maybe copper, maybe blood. It was a Tuesday, the kind of grey, heavy evening where the sun gives up early and the shadows stretch out long before night actually falls. I locked the cab, patted the warm aluminum of the grille out of habit, and headed for the neon sign buzzing angrily above the door. Bzz-zit, click bzz-zit. Even the electricity in this town sounded nervous. Inside, the diner was a different world. It was warm, smelling of bacon grease, bleach, and stale coffee. It was the kind of humidity that fogs your glasses and makes your eyes heavy the second you step out of the cold. But the atmosphere wasn't cozy. It was taut, vibrating. I took a stool at the counter, keeping my back to the wall. You never sit with your back to the door if you can help it. You watch the room. You read the energy. And the energy in here was tight as a piano wire about to snap. I did a quick scan. 3 distinct groups. First, the waitress. Name tag said Sarah. She looked about 30, maybe younger, but life had been sanding her down. She had tired eyes and hair pulled back in a fraying ponytail that had seen better days. She was wiping a section of the counter that was already clean, her movements jerky, frantic. Her eyes kept darting toward the window every time headlights swept past the glass. She was scared. You don't need a degree in psychology to see fear. You just need to know what a rabbit looks like before the hawk drops. Second, a booth in the far back corner. Shadowed. 3 men sat there. They were wearing faded field jackets, surplus gear where the camo patterns had washed out to a vague, nondescript grey-green. They hadn't ordered food, just black coffee in thick white mugs. They weren't talking. They weren't scrolling on phones. They were just existing, sitting with a stillness that felt unnatural, almost predatory. They looked like they'd been carved out of granite and left out in the rain for a decade. The one in the middle, an older guy with grey stubble, had eyes like flint. He wasn't looking at me, but I knew he'd catalogued my height, weight and threat level the second I walked in. Third, the noise. A centre booth occupied by 4 guys who looked like they owned the town and hated the mortgage payments. Loud. Expensive leather jackets that were too clean for working men. Laughing with their mouths open, taking up too much space. The ringleader was a guy with a high and tight buzz cut and a neck tattoo that crept up behind his ear like a black vine. He was drumming his fingers on the laminate table, staring at Sarah with a look that made my skin crawl. It wasn't lust. It was ownership. "Coffee black," I said when Sarah reached me. I kept my voice low. "And the meatloaf, if it's fresh." "Baked it this morning," she said. Her voice was thin, brittle as dried leaves. "You passing through?" "Just for the night," I said. "Quiet town." She let out a short, humorless laugh that sounded more like a cough. "Used to be. Not anymore." She poured the coffee, her hand shaking just enough to rattle the carafe against the ceramic cup. Hot brown liquid sloshed over the rim. She flinched like she expected to be hit for the spill. "You parked out back? The big red rig?" she asked, wiping the spill aggressively. "That's me." She leaned in, her voice dropping to a whisper that barely cleared the counter. "You might want to check your locks. Miller's boys. They mess with things just to see if they break." She flicked her eyes toward the center booth. The guy with the neck tattoo caught her looking. He didn't look away. He smiled. And it was the kind of smile you see on a feral dog right before it snaps. All teeth, no joy. "Sarah," he barked. The sound cut through the diner clatter. "Coffee's cold. Get over here." She froze. I'll make a fresh pot, Ray." "Didn't ask for a fresh pot. Asked you to come here." I took a slow sip of my coffee. It was hot, bitter, and exactly what I needed to wake up. I watched Sarah walk over to the table. She moved like she was walking the plank. She kept a distance, staying just out of arm's reach. "What do you need, Ray?" Ray moved faster than a drunk should be able to. He reached out and snatched her wrist. The diner went dead silent. The clatter of silverware stopped. The hum of the refrigerator seemed to get louder. In the back, the 3 soldiers didn't move a muscle. They didn't even turn their heads. They just stared into their coffee, statues in surplus gear. "I need you to remember when rent is due," Ray said, his voice dropping to a low growl that carried across the quiet room. He yanked her arm, pulling her off balance so she had to grab the table to keep from falling. "And I need you to stop acting like you're better than this town. My dad owns this building, Sarah. He owns your little house down on Elm. You think ignoring my texts changes that?" "Let go, Ray," she whispered, tears springing to her eyes. "Please, you're hurting me." "I'm helping you," he said, twisting her arm. I saw her knees buckle slightly. "I'm trying to help you understand your position." I set my cup down. There's a checklist I go through in my head before I get off a stool. Is it my business? No. Is there a weapon? Maybe. Am I tired? Always. But there's a line. There's always a line. A man putting his hands on a woman who can't fight back. That's not just crossing the line. That's erasing it. I stood up. I'm not a small man. I've spent 20 years hauling steel and wrestling tarps in freezing wind. I don't look like a bodybuilder. I look like a refrigerator with a beard. I walked over to the booth. I didn't rush. I just walked, my heavy boots thudding a slow, deliberate rhythm on the linoleum. "She asked you to let go," I said. My voice was low, calm. I wasn't shouting. Shouting is for people who are scared. Ray looked up. He didn't release her. In fact, he squeezed tighter. "Go sit down, old man. This is family business." "I don't see a ring," I said, looking at Sarah's hand, then Ray's. "And I don't see her smiling. Let go. Now." Ray's buddies started to slide out of the booth, smelling a fight. I didn't look at them. I kept my eyes locked on Ray. "You're making a mistake," Ray said, finally standing up. He was tall, wiry strong, the kind of strength that comes from meth and adrenaline. He released Sarah's wrist with a shove. "Sarah, go behind the counter," I said, not breaking eye contact. She scrambled back, clutching her bruised wrist. "You think because you drive a big truck you're tough?" Ray sneered, stepping into my personal space. I could smell the stale beer on his breath. "You have no idea who we are." "I don't care who you are," I said. "I just want to eat my meatloaf in peace. Sit down, shut up, or leave." Ray swung. It was a telegraphed haymaker, wide and wild, aimed at my jaw. He expected me to flinch or back up. I did neither. I stepped inside the arc. I brought my left forearm up hard, catching his bicep and stopping the punch dead before it could generate any real power. The impact made a dull thud. In the same motion, I drove my right palm into his solar plexus. It wasn't a punch. It was a shove with intent, transferring my weight through his chest. The air left Ray's lungs with a wet whoosh. He doubled over, gasping, eyes bulging. "Get him!" one of his buddies yelled. This was the messy part. The heavy guy in the denim vest lunged for my legs, trying to tackle me. It was a barroom move, clumsy but dangerous if he got a hold. I sidestepped, grabbing the back of his collar with one hand and his belt with the other. Using his own momentum, I guided him past me and drove him face first into the table. Crack! The laminate table split down the middle. The condiment tray exploded, sending ketchup and mustard flying across the booth. The heavy guy slid to the floor, groaning. The other two hesitated. They looked at Ray wheezing on the floor, then at their friend bleeding on the linoleum. That hesitation is usually all you need. "Don't," I said. I was breathing a little harder, but my hands were steady. I squared my shoulders, making myself look as wide as the truck parked outside. "Pack up your friend and get out." Ray was on his knees, face turning purple as he fought for oxygen. He looked up at me, eyes watering with pure, distilled hate. "You're dead," he choked out, spittle flying. "You hear me? You don't touch me. My dad is the sheriff. You're dead." "I hear you," I said. "Now get out." They scrambled. The two standing hauled Ray up, dragging him toward the door like a sack of feed. The heavy guy stumbled after them, blood dripping from his nose. As they hit the door, Ray turned back. He looked like a demon in the neon light. "I'm coming back," he screamed. "And I'm burning this whole place down. You hear me, Sarah? You're done." The door slammed, the little bell jingling cheerfully over the violence. Silence rushed back into the room, heavy and suffocating. I looked at Sarah. She was shaking so hard the dish rag in her hands was vibrating. She was pale, ghostly against the dark wood of the counter. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Oh God, I'm sorry. You shouldn't have done that." "He was hurting you," I said, walking back to my stool. My adrenaline was fading, leaving that cold metallic taste in my mouth. "You don't understand," she said, tears finally spilling over. "That was Ray Miller. His dad runs the county. They do whatever they want. He's been trying to get me to date him for months. He said if I didn't, he'd evict me. Now he's going to come back." I looked toward the back booth. The three soldiers hadn't moved. Not during the yelling, not during the fight, not now. They were still staring at their coffee cups, completely detached from the chaos. One of them, the oldest, slowly turned his head. He looked at the broken table, then at me. His expression was unreadable. He gave a single, imperceptible nod. Then he went back to his coffee. Cold. They were ice cold. I figured they were just drifters, maybe burned-out vets who didn't have enough fight left in them to care about a waitress and a bully. I couldn't blame them. The world takes a lot out of you, and sometimes the tank is just empty. "Pack a bag, Sarah," I said, turning back to her. She blinked, confused. "What? If he says he's coming back, he's coming back. You can't stay here tonight. Do you have family?" "My mom is in the next county, but my car, the transmission is shot. I walked here." I sighed and looked out the window. The rain had picked up, slashing against the glass. I couldn't leave her here. I had a schedule to keep, a load of steel that needed to be in Kentucky. But my moral compass is a heavy thing, and it doesn't let me turn the key when someone is in danger. "I'll drive you," I said. "Close up. I'll take you to your mom's." "I can't," she said, panic rising in her voice again. "My little sister, she's at the house. She's 12. She's waiting for me. I have to get home." "Okay. Where's the house?" "Elm Street. It's a dead end, just past the old mill." "Get your coat," I said, throwing a 20 on the counter for the coffee I didn't finish. "I'm taking you home. Then I'm parking in your driveway until morning. If Ray wants to come back, he can talk to the grill of a Peterbilt." She looked at me, searching my face for a catch, for the trick. When she didn't find one, she nodded. We walked out into the rain. The wind had teeth now, biting through my flannel shirt. I helped her up into the passenger seat of the cab. It's a climb. My truck sits high on 24s. The cab smelled like leather and diesel, a safe smell. I walked around to the driver's side, checking the mirrors. As I climbed in, I saw the 3 soldiers leaving the diner. They walked in a tight formation, heads down against the rain, moving toward the edge of the lot where the woods began. No car, no truck, just walking into the dark, vanishing into the tree line like they were never there. "Who are they?" I asked Sarah as I fired up the engine. The big diesel roared to life, shaking the rain off the hood. "I don't know," she said, shivering as the heater kicked in. "They showed up 2 days ago. They come in, order coffee, sit for hours. They pay in cash, exact change. I think they're squatting in the old mill. They act like they're waiting for something bad to happen." "They mind their business," I said, releasing the parking brake. The air exhausted with a hiss. That's rare these days. I put the truck in gear and rolled out. The wipers slashed back and forth. Swish thump, swish thump. The drive to Elm Street was short, but it felt miles long. The town was dark. Half the streetlights burned out, leaving pools of ink on the wet road. We passed a sheriff's cruiser parked near the bank. It didn't move. If Ray's dad was the sheriff, calling 911 wasn't an option. That's the worst kind of trap, when the people you're supposed to call are the ones holding the match. I checked my mirrors constantly. Every pair of headlights behind us made my grip tighten on the wheel. Were they following? No, just a sedan turning left. Paranoia is a trucker's co-pilot, and tonight it was shouting in my ear. Sarah's house was a small white clapboard thing at the very end of a cul-de-sac. It looked fragile in the high beams, like a stiff wind would blow it over. A single light was on in the living room. "That's Lily," Sarah said, unbuckling before the wheels stopped rolling. "She waits up." I pulled the truck across the end of the driveway, jackknifing the trailer slightly to create a physical barricade. It was a tactical park. Anyone who wanted to get to that front door had to go through 40 tons of steel and 18 wheels. "Go inside," I said. "Lock the doors. Turn off the porch light. I'll be right here." "You don't have to do this," she said softly. Her hand lingered on the door handle. "Yes, I do. Go." She ran through the rain. I watched her get inside, watched the silhouette of a hug with a smaller figure in the window. Then the lights went out. I settled in. I poured a cup of coffee from my thermos and cracked the window an inch to listen. The rain was loud, drumming on the sleeper cab, but I have good ears. An hour passed, then 2. The silence of the town was heavy, broken only by the wind. I sat in the dark, watching the street, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Around midnight the rain eased up. That's when I heard it. Engines, not a truck. High-revving V8s. Pickup trucks with glass-pack mufflers, aggressive, coming fast. I sat up, checking the west-facing mirror. Headlights swept across the wet trees. 3 trucks. Lifted, modified, loud. They were coming down the street in a convoy, high beams cutting through the mist. They slowed down when they saw the rig blocking the driveway. They hadn't expected a fortress. I didn't wait. I hit the air horn. Honk! A blast that shook the wet leaves off the trees and probably woke the neighbors 3 streets over. Then I flipped on my high beams and the mounted spotlights I keep for loading in dark yards. The light flooded the street, blinding them. The truck stopped. Doors flew open. I counted 6 men. Ray was in the lead. He had a baseball bat. The others had tire irons, crowbars. One had something that looked like a hunting rifle. I reached under my seat and pulled out the tire thumper. It wasn't a gun, but in close quarters, 18 inches of weighted hickory is enough to change a conversation. I opened the door and stepped out onto the fuel tank steps, standing 6 feet above them. "Road's closed, Ray!" I shouted. My voice boomed in the quiet street. "Turn around!" "Get that rig out of the way," Ray screamed. He looked unhinged, his eyes wide and glassy in the spotlight glare. He was vibrating with rage. "I'm done asking. Move it, or we burn it with you in it." "You're trespassing," I said, scanning the group. The guy with the rifle made me nervous. He was hanging back near the bed of the rear truck, using the darkness as cover. "This is my town," Ray yelled, raising the bat. "Boys, light it up." One of the guys in the back lit a rag stuffed into a glass bottle, a Molotov. This just went from a brawl to a felony. "Don't do it," I warned. He threw it. I watched the bottle tumble through the air, the flame sputtering. It fell short of the house, but smashed against the asphalt of the driveway, right in front of my bumper. Flames roared up, licking at the chrome. "Next one goes through the window," Ray laughed, a manic, broken sound. I jumped down from the truck. I couldn't let them throw another one. If that house caught fire, Sarah and Lily were trapped. I had to close the distance. I had to become the violence they weren't expecting. I hit the ground running, boots splashing in the puddles. Ray swung the bat the moment my boots hit the pavement. He was faster this time, fueled by whatever chemical courage he'd snorted in the truck. I ducked, feeling the wind of the wood whistling inches over my head, and drove my shoulder into his chest. It was like hitting a bag of cement, but he went down. We hit the wet grass hard, rolling in the mud. I scrambled up, gasping. A tire iron clipped my shoulder, a sharp, stinging shock of pain that radiated down my arm, making my fingers numb. I spun around, swinging the hickory thumper blind. It connected with a knee crack. A man screamed and went down, clutching his leg. +1. But there were too many of them. 6 on one. Math is a cruel thing in a fight. I took a heavy blow to the ribs from the blind side. The air exploded out of me. Then a fist to the back of the head. My vision swam, stars bursting in the darkness. I staggered, trying to keep my back to the truck, trying to keep them in front of me, but they were swarming. "Hold him!" Ray screamed from the ground, scrambling to his feet. "Hold him down!" 2 guys grabbed my arms. I struggled, kicking out, landing a boot on someone's shin. But they had the leverage and the weight. They slammed me back against the fuel tank of the Peterbilt. The cold aluminum bit into my back. Ray stood over me, panting, wiping mud from his face. The baseball bat was raised high. His eyes were wild, dilated pupils swallowing the iris. "I told you," Ray spat, blood and saliva mixing on his chin. "You're dead." He raised the bat higher, preparing for the killing stroke. I tensed, ready to take it, hoping my skull was harder than the ash wood. Click. The sound was small, tiny, but in the sudden silence between breaths, it cut through the shouting like a knife. It was the distinct, mechanical, unmistakable sound of a safety selector being disengaged on a rifle. +1. Drop it. The voice came from the darkness behind the headlights. It wasn't loud, it wasn't shouting, it was flat, bored, and carried a weight that froze everyone in place. Ray turned, the bat still raised. Stepping out of the shadows of the tree line, moving through the rain like ghosts, were the 3 men from the diner, the soldiers. But they didn't look like bums anymore. They were moving in a wedge formation, spacing perfect, weapons traversing their sectors. The one in the lead, the older guy with the grey stubble, was holding a suppressed carbine tight to his shoulder. Where he got it, I didn't know and didn't ask. The suppressor made the barrel look long and thick. The other 2 had pistols held at the low ready, their movements fluid, precise, and synchronized. +1. I said drop it, the older man repeated. He walked right past the guy with the tire iron without even looking at him. Ray laughed nervously, a high-pitched, jagged sound. "Who are you? You're the bums from the mill. You think those toy guns scare me? Shoot me. My dad is the—" Thwip. A single round hit the asphalt an inch from Ray's boot. It didn't make a bang, Just a sharp hiss of air and the crack of the bullet impacting the road. "Next one goes through the knee," the soldier said. His tone didn't change. "Then the elbow, then the shoulder. You have 3 seconds to decide if you want to walk away or crawl for the rest of your life." The guy with the hunting rifle near the truck panicked. He raised his weapon, swinging the barrel toward the soldiers. Bad move. Before he could even shoulder it, the soldier on the left fired. Thwip! The rifle flew out of the guy's hands, the wooden stock shattering into splinters. He screamed, clutching his hand, staring at the blood welling up between his fingers. "Sniper!" one of Ray's buddies yelled, diving behind a truck tire. "No!" the older soldier said, stepping fully into the spotlight of my truck. "Just infantry. Now run!" Ray looked at me, then at the soldiers, then at the burning patch of grass where his Molotov had failed. He looked at the shattered rifle. His courage didn't just break, it evaporated. "Let's go!" Ray yelled. "Move!" They scrambled back to their trucks, tripping over each other in the mud. Tires spun on the wet pavement, smoke rising as they peeled out in reverse, engines screaming in protest. They disappeared down the street, leaving nothing behind but the smell of burnt rubber and the guy with the shattered hand, who was limping after them, wailing. I sat up, groaning. My ribs felt like they were on fire. My head was throbbing where the fist had connected. The older soldier walked over to me. He didn't offer a hand. He just looked down, scanning me for major injuries with clinical detachment. "You have a broken rib," he said. "Maybe 2. You'll live." "Thanks," I wheezed, using the truck step to pull myself to my feet. "I thought you guys were just passing through." "We are," he said. He looked at the house where Sarah was peeking through the blinds. "But we hate bullies." "Who are you?" I asked. He slung the carbine behind his back, hidden under the oversized surplus jacket. It vanished as quickly as it had appeared. "Call me Sergeant," he said. "We're waiting for a ride." "A ride?" I asked, looking at the empty, dark street. The rain had stopped, leaving a heavy mist hanging in the air. "Transport got delayed. Weather," he said. "But we can't stay here now. Those kids will come back with the sheriff. And if the sheriff is who they say he is, he'll bring the whole department. We just exposed our position." He pulled a radio from his pocket. Not a CB, but a heavy, encrypted military brick. He keyed the mic. "Create 06 to Mother. Status update." A voice crackled back, distorted but clear enough to hear the authority in it. "Mother to 06, we are 20 mics out. Extraction is green." "Copy," the sergeant said. "Update extraction zone. We have a situation. Hostiles in the AO. Local law enforcement is compromised. We have civilians under threat, requesting assertive extraction. Define assertive, 06. The sergeant looked at me, then at Sarah's house. He cracked a rare, terrifying grin. "Full blockade. Lock it down. I want to secure the perimeter until we are wheels up." "Copy that, 06. Rolling heavy. ETA 19 minutes. He pocketed the radio. "You might want to move your truck to the side, driver," he said to me. "You're going to need the room." "Who's coming?" I asked. "The cavalry," he said. We waited. The 3 soldiers took up defensive positions around the house. They didn't speak. They just watched the street, scanning sectors. I moved the rig, parking it parallel to the curb, nursing my ribs. Sarah came out with blankets and coffee, her face pale, but her eyes wide with wonder. We stood on the porch, watching the end of the street. 19 minutes later, the ground started to shake. It wasn't thunder. It was the deep, rhythmic thrum of heavy diesel engines. Headlights appeared, not 1 set, not 2. 4 black SUVs turned onto the street, flanked by 2 armored tactical trucks. They moved with purpose, closing off the cul-de-sac. Men in full tactical gear poured out, securing the street in seconds. A man in a suit stepped out of the lead SUV. He walked up to the sergeant and saluted. The sergeant returned it casually. "Transport ready, sir," the suit said. "We have baggage," the sergeant said, pointing to the house. "Local sheriff is a problem. The woman and the kid. They need a relocation. New start." The suit looked at Sarah, then at the sergeant. He nodded. "Done. We'll handle the locals." The sergeant turned to me. He extended a hand. His grip was like iron. "You held the line, driver," he said. "That counts." "Just doing my job," I said. He nodded. "Keep the shiny side up." They loaded up. Sarah hugged me, crying, thanking me over and over. They put her and Lily in one of the SUVs. The convoy turned around, executing a synchronized exit that was a thing of beauty. And just like that, they were gone. I was left alone in the quiet street, the rain starting to fall again. My ribs ached, my knuckles were swollen, and I was exhausted. But the house was safe. The wall had held. I climbed back into the Peterbilt. The cab was cold, but the engine was warm. I put it in gear and rolled toward the highway. I hit the interstate just as the sun was starting to bleed grey light over the horizon. The rain had finally stopped, leaving the world washed clean and smelling of wet earth. The rhythmic hum of the tires on the asphalt was the only music I needed. My side throbbed with every shift of the gears, a reminder of the night, a souvenir. I touched the bruise forming on my jaw and winced. I thought about Sarah and Lily. They were somewhere safe now, disappearing into the system, away from Ray and his father. They had a chance. That's all anyone really gets in this life. A chance. I thought about the sergeant. "You held the line." I'm not a soldier. I don't have a unit. I don't have backup calling in assertive extraction. I have a logbook, a thermos of coffee, and 18 wheels. But sometimes on a dark road in the middle of nowhere, that's enough. I looked in the rearview mirror. The road stretched out behind me, empty and endless. I wasn't a hero. I was just a driver who refused to look the other way. I reached for the CB radio, the static hissing like a familiar friend. "Breaker 19, I said, my voice raspy. "This is Redline, southbound on the 65. Watch your 6 out there, drivers. The roads are slick and the shadows are long, but if you see trouble, don't be afraid to be the wall." I hung up the mic and shifted into the high gear. The engine roared, a defiant sound against the morning silence. I kept driving, always driving. Thank you for watching. And if stories like this one about courage, sacrifice and second chances speak to you, please consider subscribing to our channel. Your support helps us share more incredible true stories that honor the forgotten heroes among us.